Good evening and happy Sunday. Welcome to the Upset Podcast. Tonight we're talking about trigger points, gun violence prevention. Coming up next. Hello, once again, welcome back to the Upset Podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in on this Sunday evening, and I'm happy that these gentlemen are here. Hey, guys.
Hey, where's the rest of the team?
Hey, it's June. We got vacations or something? I don't know, right? But I'm happy you guys showed up. How's everybody doing?
I'm doing good.
Well, it's a beautiful Sunday.
It's been a refreshing one. The weather has been warming up this week, though, man. The 80s this week, high 80s too.
It got, but I'm noticing something, that a June high 80 or a June 90, it isn't quite like an August 90.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, it was still bearable out there.
It was. I think it's just we've just had a lot of weather schizophrenia lately because one day it's cold and rainy, and then the next day it's hot and sunny. It's like, what are we doing here? How do we even get dressed in the morning sometimes? But
yeah. Sometimes I just don't. I just go out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So
and show the world the naked truth.
Oh yeah, that's the kind of some truth we need to keep to ourselves, right? So I saw in the news, our best buds are now parting ways. The bromance between DJT and Musk has dissipated. I'm like, this is horrible. It's like watching a bad breakup on social media. You know how you're like, please don't put your business out there. It's just sad to see. But some people said they knew it was coming. Did you guys see?
Everybody knew it was coming. I mean, you don't have enough zip codes to house the two egos represented by those two men. The surprise for me is not that they had a fracture in their relationship. The surprise for me is that there are enough Americans who believe that somehow or another these two characters have the moral integrity to lead this nation forward in an ethical way that wouldn't be self-seeking. I'm just surprised that people thought that they would or that they could.
And now they're turning on each other and exposing each other. So,
Yeah, and it spoke to something in the American people. Trump, he resonates with them. So that's I know Tyler, you said you're surprised. I'm definitely not surprised at all. But what's interesting is when Tesla's stock dropped, like if his stocks would have stayed up, I think they would have still been in cahoots with one another. But once his stock plummeted, that's when he had to say something now.
Yeah, this is not making me money anymore.
It's not making no money. So yeah.
But what I mean, the personal shots that they're taking at each other, it's like watching two juvenile school kids. Your mama. Well, your grandma wears combat boots. I mean, it's. But what it says to me is, can't you see that if they will turn on one another like that to protect their own self-interest and their own ego, what do you think they'll do to you? I mean, that's
Yeah, it was just interesting to me. You see drama like this on like reality TV and all that stuff where the characters go online and tweet this back and forth, and you see all this drama, and people do that to create like hype for the show. I was like, but this is our government. You know what I mean? Like this is crazy that this is our government, taking these shots and saying that DJT's in the Epstein files and all. That's why they won't be released. It's like now it's time to expose things,
See,
and
but what Elon Musk is really exposing is himself. He's saying, I knew that this man was a child, a pedophile, or perhaps a rapist. I knew it, but I told you that he was good because it served my interest. Musk is really telling on himself.
It's true. It's true. It's exposing both of them for sure, but still.
Yeah. And what about those that there are a lot of people, I don't want to say no names or call anybody, but there are people who were supporting a big 47 fan, and then now he's cutting funds to their programs. For instance, Job Corps, he cut that.
Oh yeah.
And now people are like, what is this government doing? Like, where were you? Like, people told you this was coming.
They fell for the okie doke. Like they said, they were fine with other people losing things, but when it comes around their block, suddenly they're paying attention and there's an uproar and there's rage. It's like, couldn't you just see the pattern of behavior? There's no entity that he cares about to the point where he's going to be loyal to it if it doesn't help him in some way.
Yeah,
I perceive that this nation is falling under the judgment of God, and I don't mean that in some kind of weird way. I mean, but typically what would happen is God would leave a nation to their own devices and give them the leadership that reflects their true character. And then God would remove his hedge from around the nation so that they would suffer the natural consequences of their environment or of their actions. And I sense that the United States of America is in that place, and that we will see, and we'll suffer with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm seeing that as well. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I know, today we're talking about something as it relates to June, being Gun Violence Prevention Month, but it's also Pride Month. And I know we've talked about,
But the administration, they're trying to change that.
What do they want?
Yeah.
I forgot the name. They want to take away Pride Month, call it something else.
Yeah.
But
that's one of those campaign promises.
And there are a lot of religious people support it, because one of the easiest things for religious people to do is to be critical of individuals whose life is so qualifiably different. I mean, most of us, if you're not oriented towards being sexually attracted to somebody in your same sex, it's easy for you to just be very condemning of individuals like that. And they have no reason to be proud. Every human being has a reason to be proud to be alive, and for their being. And there are a lot of religious people. I remember talking to one of the sweetest saints in my church, and I asked him, I said, what do you think about homosexuality? And she said, oh, Pastor, I think that we should take all of them and put them on an island and burn them. What? This was a saint. I kid you not. And I remember thinking, and I mean, I knew, and such a sweet voice. I thought she was to take all of them and hug them. But, the fact of the matter is that people are people, and they come in all sorts of different ways. And we have to figure out how to make room for people to live, even if they're different from who we are or who we expect them to be. And religious people, they find a couple of scriptures and run with it, and they sanctify their hatred.
Yeah. Tally. A couple of years ago, I don't know, maybe about 3 years ago, I had like a mini conference, if that's what mini conference at my church about the whole LGBTQ plus. Just about the conversation. Just have a conversation about it. Let's dialogue. Let's talk about it. And a sweet old lady, she said, the conference, she said, Pastor, if too many of them come into the church, I'm leaving. And she was, I just like what? Like she said, it's a limit. If it's too many now, I'm out. She didn't say how many, but she said, if too many, I'm leaving.
Oh, mercy. I think this is a weird month for some people, because they recognize it's Pride Month. You see it different places. And some take it as an opportunity to let me get my picket signs, let me get my anti, things ready, because whatever, as prideful as they're going to be, we're going to come back even more powerful with why this lifestyle is wrong. And, that's when they're gearing up for all of this kind of things. But then I've seen some other places to kind of take kind of a neutral approach. Like I was intrigued at my daughter's school. It's a public school. They sent a newsletter home, and it says, for those who celebrate, happy Pride Month. So it's like we're not saying we do, but if you do, we're acknowledging that you do. And okay, so, we're acknowledging that you do. And it's just kind of like, I wonder in places like that where you have different groups of people who have different beliefs, how do you navigate that without offending one? So I'm sure there were some who wish that the school never said anything about or acknowledging Pride Month. And then there are those who feel like if my child goes to the school and they're in that space, they want to feel like they're in a space where they would be accepted. So
yeah. Well, you have to ask yourself, your true godliness is shown when you reach the borders of what you would consider to be intolerable difference. When a person is praying and they say, the name Allah, and you find yourself so triggered that you can't stay in the same room with them.
Right.
That's when you ask yourself some questions, and then you have to say, well, why can't I give this person space to be who they are if it is not harmful to me or others?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, just bringing that up. But like I said, this month is Gun Violence Prevention Month. I wonder how many of our listeners out there knew that and are aware of that. But on the Upset podcast, we like to cover topics that are related to like what's happening in the world. And I definitely think this is a topic that deserves some attention and discussion, which is why we are talking about it today. And we have, in true fashion, one of our scholars to open us up with this dialogue. Go ahead, Tal. Take it away.
Did somebody come in? Is the scholar here? Oh, no. Listen, I'm far from a scholar, but I have had the opportunity in another phase of life to work with anti-violence groups and gun violence groups. And so I'm glad that we're taking this on. And let's get right into it. I mean, when it comes down to it, we here at the Upset Podcast want to pose the question to you today. And that is, how do you live in a society that has become triggered? Yeah, I mean, if you are facing gun violence, I mean, and living in a society where guns have become a part of the zeitgeist of your culture, how do you deal with that? And before we get into that, let's just take a look at some salient numbers, some statistics to consider as we talk about gun violence in our culture today. First of all, it is estimated that there are approximately 1 billion guns available. And by guns, I'm not talking about bazookas or missiles. I'm talking about those kind of firearms that can be controlled and handled by one person. There are about 1 billion of them available worldwide. Now, here's the thing that you might not realize, and we're talking about military and everything else. When you think about it, you would say, okay, so you got 1 billion guns worldwide, probably 10, 15, 20% of them are not in the military, but you would be wrong, because 85% of the weapons that are out there in this world are in civilian hands. In other words, people who are not in the military are the ones who are owning the most guns. About 857 million guns are in the hands of civilians. Now, we ramp it up a little bit because we bring it a little closer to home. Of those 857 million guns, 46% of them, almost half of them, are in the hands of the United States of America. I believe we have about 12% of the population of the world or something like that, maybe less, but we have almost half of the guns. 393 guns, it is supposed, are in the hands of American citizens. Now, 393 million guns in the hands of citizens. There are only 340 million American citizens. That means that the United States of America is the only nation that has more guns than people. There is more than one gun per person in the United States. And that leads to certain problems. When you have a surfeit of weapons like that floating around in a culture, you're going to have some problems. And as a result, in 2023, the statistics show that over almost 47,000 people died because of the use of guns. 47,000 people died because of the use of guns. Now, when you think about that, you say, we've got crazy people running around shooting other people in the streets of our cities. It is not as simple as you might think, because more than half of those 47,000 people who died because of guns, they were holding the gun when they died, because 58% of the deaths by guns are self-inflicted through suicide. It's always that way. People don't realize that suicide typically outstrips murder or homicide in our society all the time. But those are just the people who die. 47,000 people dying because of handgun usage or rifle usage. That doesn't tell you how many people are actually impacted by it physically. In the United States of America, every day, 327 people are shot every single day. You got to do the math on that. That means that you've got well over 100,000 people being shot in the United States on an annual basis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is the raw numbers. But then let's look at the staggering cost associated with those numbers. This came from a report that was produced by the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform that talks about what it costs because someone pulls a trigger. The average cost of a gun-related homicide, when you talk about the police, the courts, and all that goes into just bringing that thing to a head or to some level of reconciliation, for every gun homicide, our culture pays $1.2 million per homicide. Now, if it's not a fatal infraction with a gun, you're talking a little bit less, about $700,000 for every time someone gets shot in the United States. This is on average, $700,000 for every time somebody gets shot. That doesn't even bring into consideration the cost of adjudicating and incarcerating someone who does the shooting. Let's say somebody shoots someone, kills somebody, and they're given 25 years to life, which is a typical sentence. When someone goes to jail in the United States of America and you keep them in jail for 25 years, the total cost of incarcerating that individual is just about, on average, $831,000. Think about that. Someone shoots someone to rob them, and you say, why'd you rob him? Because he had $500. I wanted that money. You could give that person $831,000 over a 25-year span. That would stop the robberies, wouldn't it? But it doesn't simply work that way. And it's a lot worse if you're in California, because California incarceration costs more. To keep somebody in jail in California for 25 years, you're looking at a whopping $2.65 million. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an unaffordable expense. But why do we love guns so much? Well, because there's a little document that we have that kind of brings us close to guns right from the very beginning. It's called, what amendment is that, Dr. Keenan? It's the Second Amendment. That's right. You got it. I tell you, can't sneak anything by these folks. It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's one of the first of the guarantees of our Constitution. And you best believe that people are keeping that one up. The United States of America has been in love with the idea of guns from the very beginning, but we've gone beyond that now. It's not simply the idea of protecting or defending or hunting. Guns have now become a part of our psychology. Guns represent sophistication and power. Take a look at the movie posters that you see. There's James Bond, two beautiful women, one on either side, wearing a tuxedo. But what's right there front and center? A gun. Because guns represent something more than simply hunting or defending. It's sophistication. It's power. But it's gone beyond that now, and I don't quite understand it. But guns have now become a talisman of sexuality. What does a pair of stiletto, high-heeled boots, a bikini, and black leather gloves, and a half-naked woman have to do with a gun? But there she is, and somehow or another, it has almost become natural to us. Guns and sexuality have connected. Power, sexuality. It's no wonder then that oppressed classes of people are beginning to look at guns as tools of equality. That's why the hip hop world is very heavily featuring the use and the presence of firearms. Okay, just a little bit further before we wrap this up and bring it to our discussion. Here in the United States of America, we know that there are guns everywhere, but it's more than that. It's happening all around the world. Now, for some reason or another, you can't see that. But the flag of Mozambique, it didn't translate well, but the flag of Mozambique has on it an AK-47. This is the flag of a nation that features the picture of a gun. So does the flag of Guatemala. You can't see that there, but behind that beautiful bird, the Quetzal bird there are two crossed carbine rifles right there on their flag. The insignia of East Timor has on it an AK-47. East Timor is a nation that just emerged not too long ago near the Philippines. It features a gun on their national crest, just as the nation of Zimbabwe does. You may not be able to see it, but in the background, right next to that gardening implement, there is a gun behind those two kudu animals there. And then even our own neighbor to the south of us, the island nation of Haiti, you don't see it really well, but there in the background are fixed bayonets on rifles. These nations all feature firearms because nations are now beginning to recognize that freedom comes through the barrel of a gun. What has happened in the United States is becoming a worldwide phenomenon now. People are becoming attracted to guns. Well, we close with this. As people who are spiritual and people who believe in scripture, if only we can get folks to read the Bible and to become more familiar with what thus saith the Lord. But that will surprise you too, because in the Bible, you will find that there's a whole lot of violence being proclaimed, exclaimed, and extolled. This is David, Psalm 18, 32 and 34. It is God who arms me with strength and makes my way perfect. He teaches my hands to make war so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. They didn't have guns, but notice he's speaking of weaponry there, in the same vein as he's speaking of his relationship with God. I know you figured that that's a mistake, but there in Psalm 149, verse 6, let the high praises of God be in their mouth and a two-edged sword in their hand. Worship, weapon. I know. That's the Old Testament. They didn't really have it right. Well, how about this one from the New Testament? From no one less than our own Lord. Then Jesus said to them, but now he who has a money bag, let him take it. And he who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy himself a weapon. This is Bible talking about weapons on gun violence now. I'm not exactly sure what to do with all of these things, but I do know one thing. I can always yield myself to people who are wiser and better prepared to discuss the issues of the day. And I would always ask them this question after we consider the hard issues. What say you one? What say you all about this matter of gun violence? Well, there we have it.
Well, I want to point out a few things that I did not realize from what you shared. One, the cost for just someone being incarcerated as a result of gun violence. I think those numbers are things that definitely I don't think people are aware of when they're so eager to put people in jail. But also the amount of flags that have guns or rifles in them. I even went to Guatemala last year, and I never noticed that. I mean, I saw the flag, multiple places, and I think my instinct. This is why I don't like guns. Like I don't like guns. I know, we'll talk about gun ownership. That's one of the reasons I don't like guns, because I just feel like nothing good can come from them. And I say that because of the power thing that you referenced. Countries are using it to show that we're powerful. We're here to, we're going to protect our country. 007, this is power. I have this in my hand and I'm invincible. Nobody's going to mess with me. Even, the woman, a symbol of power. I feel like because that is what that tool is primarily used for. I know there's protection. Don't get me wrong. I know there's protection. But because it tends to yield to people using it as a form of power, even the most innocent owner can find themselves, even when protect my family, I'll shoot them before they shoot me, kind of thing. Even then, it presents the danger of you also feeling like this is my power. And though you may start off with a good intention, it could lead to corruption. So I just, that's why you don't
like guns.
I just don't. Right.
Let me ask you a question, Tasha. If someone broke into your house, who would you call? The Mr. Softy ice cream man, or who'd you call?
I mean, I would call the police. I know the police probably.
Would you call the police and say, now, listen, I want y'all to come, but don't be bringing no guns up in here.
No, I wouldn't say that. And I don't get me wrong. I recognize the usefulness of them. But yeah, at the same time, I've also seen how they have been used to, it's like, how do you keep people from going too far with the use of guns? Because even as we talk about police, we see how even the fact that they carry a gun has given some of them this new, sense of, I have the power, even in cases where they should not be using it to wield their power on others. So I don't know. I just feel like it's one of those areas that it can become dangerous. But I mean, you guys let me know, because I know that,
Well, Keenan, you're
what is that Natasha?
I know that some of us may own one or two weapons, and I just want to know for those who do, how do you keep yourself checked, like to make sure that
you don't say. Yeah. So I know ever since the whole South Carolina, the shooting in the church, I know a lot of pastors, they felt that, they just need to do something to be prepared. And I've heard of some pastors, they're like, okay, I got to make sure that I'm prepared. So I know some pastors that carry all the time, including when they go to church, because of that very reason. I do know.
Some pastors that do that. Huh?
Yeah. I know one or two who have told me that. Now, I do. I know some pastors.
But I'm glad that you referenced that situation, because obviously, what could happen. We see that as an example could happen, and no church wants to be in a position where that happens and somebody's able to come in and just start taking people out. But then too, there's that fear, that danger of when fear and power are combined, sometimes it can become even more reckless, because in your head what could happen, and you have this thing and something, then you could also do something. You know what I mean? I understand both sides. Don't get me wrong, but I lean more towards, I just feel like, because one of the numbers I didn't hear you mention, Tally, were those, or maybe you did, the accidental, like, from a...
I didn't mention that.
A gun nearby, a child stumbles across it, either kills themselves or a sibling. It's like, to me, like the fact that could happen outweighs for me even an intruder. And I know that's,
Yeah. And that's why you got to be responsible. You got to be responsible. You got to have, like in the state of Virginia, you got to go through a class to it's an open carry state. But if you want to get your concealment license. You have to go to a class. You have to be educated on the proper ways to store your firearms. So that's very important. You have to make sure you store it properly. And I would tell somebody, pray about it. Take that to the Lord in prayer. Everybody, you got to follow your own conscience, but I do have my concealment license, for all my church people. I don't carry.
It's like, don't fear me.
To church, not right now, but I don't do that. However, I know some pastors that do, but you have to just be responsible. You have to go to the range. You have to get real. And I was in the military as well, so you have to, become familiar with it. And then I know some people that they take their kids, they take them to the range as well, so they're not so shocked being around a firearm.
Right.
But,
yeah.
But and there's different philosophies. But I was gonna say you have to take that to the Lord and pray about it. Because I would never tell somebody, don't even touch guns if there's something happen. They're like, man, if I had a gun. And then you tell somebody you should have a gun, and then an accident happened. Like, if I didn't have that in my house. So you have to really take that to the Lord and prayer, for real.
There are very few accidents with guns in places where people are very familiar with guns, like where people hunt and have guns regularly. Typically what happens is a child discovers a gun and plays with it. It's a toy, and he's unaware of it. And so, like what Keenan was saying, if you're going to have one, then you need to know how to be safe. It's just like a car. There are way more kids who die as a result of car accidents, than from accidental shootings. But we don't say, I'm against my child having a license, and we recognize that we need to increase the safety factors. But the question comes about, I was at a meeting a few years back, and it was 5 of us ministers, and we were talking about guns. And what I did not realize, and what I found out at the meeting, was I was the only minister who was not carrying a firearm. I mean, the only one not carrying one. And I didn't know what to think about that. But most churches now have armed security as a part of their church. And how do you feel about that, Tasha? I mean, knowing that the deacon who has that offering plate and giving you your communion wafer, if you throw that communion wafer in the air, he might be able to put a hole in it for you.
Listen, and don't get me wrong. I think because, I want to make that distinction between gun usage and gun violence, because I know there are people who use guns for purpose of protection. Some people use it for sport, which I think is interesting. But so I appreciate the fact that if I'm somewhere, there is someone who has something that could protect people should a threat arise. Assuming that person has had the proper training that you guys are talking about, and not just someone who went and picked up a license. Because I feel like there's more to this thing than knowing how to store your gun. I feel like there's even some emotional types of things that need to be dealt with in terms of determining whether someone should have a gun. Because if you're unstable, and I think there is a requirement. Do you have to get some type of
every state is different
evaluation? Okay.
Every state is like in Virginia is open carry. So you can literally just go to the store, buy a gun, and just put it on your hip.
Yeah. So just because Deacon has one, I don't know, Deacon, I'm just saying I'm not always as comfortable because I just don't know the state of the individual who has it and what might trigger that person or, so while I appreciate the safety that comes with that, it still makes me nervous. It just does. Just knowing a gun is around just makes me nervous. That's just me. I don't know.
And then, last
more familiar.
We got camp meeting coming up. Last camp meeting we had an incident.
That's true.
The last day.
Yeah,
that's true.
Somebody they shot in the woods or something like that.
Yeah.
So you got to be responsible. That's an unfortunate incident. Is Pennsylvania? I know both of you in Pennsylvania. Is that an open carry state?
It's an open carry state. Yeah, it is an open carry state, and people realize that. But now, and when people say, I thought you had to have a license to carry. You have to have a license to carry a concealed weapon. But
So
if
it
you're
has to,
carrying it openly, yeah,
and openly means it's visible.
It's visible, yeah. And
Somewhere on
so,
your body, people can see that you
yeah,
have a gun, or if it's
right.
in your car, it's on the seat. Like, when you're transporting, does that
Yeah, if it's on the seat,
seat has to be out? Can't be
it's
in your glove
visible,
compartment.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
now, you don't want to be, driving while black talking about I got my rights, because you and your rights will be under a tombstone. But, it is the idea of being able to own a gun and to carry a gun is relatively easy. Now, New Jersey has really strict and strenuous laws. So does New York. But once you get past the Delaware, I mean, Delaware, people don't realize the Mason-Dixon line is at Delaware. I mean,
Mm,
and you're in the South once you hit Delaware.
right.
I mean, those states you can carry, but at camp meeting, we have armed people now,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah, it's not the
question.
pastors no more doing the security. Yes, it's armed security
Trained
professionals.
Yeah,
trained
Trained armed.
professionals who are very
yeah.
familiar with using and knowing when it's
Mhm.
appropriate and when it's
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Well, is violence something that? How do we look at violence? Yeah.
I look at it as an intent to inflict harm. Um,
Okay. So, all right.
but
Let's
there's a
say. Go
caveat,
ahead.
because obviously if someone's breaking into your house and they are trying to cause harm to you and you're protecting yourself, that your intent is to cause harm to them. But I feel like when the intent is like malicious, meaning I want to kill you, I want to maim you because of something I want, or need that I may not, because I'm trying to figure out the difference, because I want to stay safe, so I'm going to shoot you because I need to be safe. But yeah, I feel like violence is when you're using it to cause harm maliciously, like not
Okay.
in terms
I
of
think I think that what Tally is saying, why is America so violent? No, why? Why, Tally? Please answer that
No,
question.
I wasn't saying that, but I'll entertain that question. I mean, I think violence. The United States of America, for example, and their violence, it starts with the need of independence or freedom. If you notice, those flags and those national crests that featured it were all nations that had suffered oppression, and in their quest to be free, they used violence to free themselves. That's as old and as sanctified as the Bible, where you have a God who calls himself the God of hosts or the God of armies, who makes war. I mean, all throughout the Old Testament, God is typified and presented as a God of war and violence. Samuel tells Saul, go in there, kill everybody. And when Saul doesn't do it, Samuel upbraids him and takes a battle axe and chops a man to pieces in broad daylight as an act of divine justification. Now, I find that hard to accept. I really do. But this is God's sanctified violence. Let us not forget that text. And there was war in heaven. The serpent and his angel, Lucifer and his angels fought, and Michael and his angels fought. There was violence in heaven. And so we have to accept the fact that violence can become a part of our world and that God will participate in it. So what do you say with that, Keenan?
I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
right. I don't have no disagreement with anything that you
But I
said.
think people just don't know. They don't have the discernment all the time to know when it's acceptable violence. Because I've seen people, even.
Well, let me ask you a question. Was when the Israelites ran through Canaan, and they were told, when you go into the city, kill everyone, kill the men, kill the women, kill those who had given birth, and old men and old women, and even the cattle. Was that acceptable violence?
Who told them to do that?
God.
Yeah.
I mean,
according to the scriptures. According to the scriptures, God told them to do that. Now, that's according to what's written.
Yeah.
Now, I have some thoughts about that, but according to what's written, because that's the same spirit.
Wait. So you saying that you have some thoughts about
whether God said it or not?
Whether God said it or not?
I have thoughts about how the scriptures are written in a way that validates the position of the people who those scriptures are written to justify and validate. I have some thoughts about that, how the scriptures are used in that way. It is very difficult to see justification for killing a child that was just born, who's nursing at his mother's breast. But when you perceive that God wants you to conquer that land, and it is written that way, I understand the inspiration of your writing it that way. It's very difficult to perceive that God's saying, yeah, I'm taking. I mean, for example, the prayers of imprecation in the Psalms, where it isn't David, where in Psalms, what is it, 87? I forget the one that starts off beautifully, about, oh, Jerusalem, if I forget you, may my tongue cleave to its mouth and all that. And then at the end of that psalm, it says, blessed are the ones who dash the children of my enemies' heads against the stones.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
So violent.
The Bible is one of the most violent books ever written.
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very brutal. I mean, even though when you look at something like the flood, and how people are just wiped away, with water. It may not be as gory, but it's still a group of people. And I do feel like that's part of the sovereignty. I mean, God knows what he's doing. He knows why those things are necessary. He knows the lessons he's trying to teach. He knows, and that's part of that trusting in God's divine power. And that's a difficulty sometimes with obedience too. So when you feel like this doesn't seem like this is what God would want, but if he's instructing me to do it, and I think even with him sealing the ark, so that it's almost like when judgment comes.
Yeah, I mean, but that's when God does it.
Yeah, when
God commissions a human being to do it.
Yeah, that's where it's like people are like, did God really tell you that? But honestly, when God tells you to do something, you have to do it. And I have to say, there are people who are currently imprisoned because of things they've done, and they claim that God told them to do it.
God told them to do it.
Yeah, when we see that as mental illness, you know what I mean? Like that's how it's classified. They're in the cycle, portion of the prison because of that. So it's a tough thing. But I was looking at some of the statistics on some of the states that have the most reported gun violence. I want to know which ones do you think are at the top? I'm just curious if you
the most reported gun violence.
Yes.
The ones with the most lenient gun laws, more likely.
So DC, see, that's in our territory, so that's why.
DC. Oh,
DC.
That has really.
It's up there. Yeah, it's one of the top. It's actually the top, followed by Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and New Mexico. Now, I have not cross-referenced in terms of what their gun laws are. But the lowest, which well, I don't know which states are not have stricter ones, but the lowest.
New Jersey has very strict gun laws.
And New York, right? You said New York as well?
And New York, yeah. Two of the strictest in the nation.
And they are among the lowest. So Massachusetts is the lowest. Then it's New York. Then it's New Jersey. Then it's New York, Rhode Island, and Hawaii. So I do see that there is a correlation between having some of these stricter guidelines in terms of the correlation to how many, and that's why when legislation is trying to be passed, it's important, like for your state, if you'd like to see it go down. I didn't see where Pennsylvania was. I should have looked where Pennsylvania was. You have to advocate for these things based on what you're seeing. But I know, like for instance, in this area, there's a lot of like hunting. In Pennsylvania, there's gun loving. As a matter of fact, I was going to work one day and I saw all these cars parked at a house, just a house on the street. And I was like, why don't people always, it's like periodically there's like a lot of cars in this person's yard. So one day I passed by and it had a sign in the yard that says guns. Like it was just guns, and they're like an arrow pointing to the house. So I'm assuming that this person, hosts some type of, and I was like, wow, like we're at the point where people are like hosting gun events in their homes for people to come.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing with these guns? Like, I just refuse to believe that everybody who is like, when you love guns, what does that mean? I don't know. I just feel like
it means that you love power. It means that you love a sense of security. It means that you love, and this is not me okaying it or endorsing it, but what people are drawn to with a gun is it is the ability to be godlike. I mean, a twisted sense of ability to be godlike. That because a gun allows you to bark here but bite over there. It gives you that sense of transcendent power. It gives you, it's like a guy in a really fast souped up car. He will push himself to limits because he thinks he has more power than he does. Right. And a gun will do that to a person.
And that's why it scares me.
Or people. For some as well, but also just a sense of protection. Some people they feel the more guns that they have, of course, it's a power thing. They feel like the more they are protected, and so that's why I know a few people that got a lot of guns.
Yeah, and they have like rooms.
Yeah, I do too.
Rooms. And rooms are good. Like they preparing for like the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah,
and they're like, well, protection. They said, I just want to make sure that.
But do you really need all those to protect you, like an individual?
No, you don't. I mean, but it is, if one is good, two is better, and three is great. I mean, and you see these people; they become addicted to the notion of having another firearm or another gun in the house. And I mean, but Keenan asked a question not long ago: why is it becoming so epidemic in America? And that is because America has been so threatening to others that they are now perceiving threat from others and even from themselves. These people who went to Washington on January the 6th a few years back, some of them had guns because they perceived that their nation was being taken over by others who looked like them. And so America, because we are so addicted to power and so desirous of projecting that power and so afraid of the potential of threat, we have become, say that again, King?
I said you're afraid of losing power.
Afraid of losing that power, yeah. I mean, look at our defense budget. Our defense budget is obscene in a world where children can't eat. The fact that you will spend multiple billions of dollars to figure out ways to kill other human beings rather than 10% of that to figure out ways to sustain the life of those same human beings. There's something twisted in our psyche.
I agree. And also statistics show that Black Americans are at a higher risk of gun violence. And yet I don't feel like we're as engaged in the prevention. I mean, let me not say that, because there are some cities, even in Philadelphia, I've seen some initiatives where it's even Black men against guns, or all that. But I just feel like when something is a threat to your community in particular, that's even more a reason why it should be something that you're interested in preventing. And I know, even as we think about all the school shootings, because this is usually when this topic comes up a lot, like when there's some, random person in our mind who walks into a school and is able to just spray teachers and young children. And we're like, how does this person get a gun? And then in many cases, we realize that either they got it legally or they took it from a parent who had it legally. And a lot of those cases, they're individuals who wanted to make some type of statement, as we say, get some type of, they felt powerless in some situation, and they felt like, where I can take this thing and get instant power. And it's like, how do we rewire that to the point where guns aren't looked at as a way of gaining something that you're lacking. And the fact that America is the largest, have the largest amount of guns, and we're not even, I can't. Like when you said that there were how many? 1 billion? And
1 billion worldwide.
And we have, what percent was it?
Something like 46% of those guns.
Like, come on, like, do we not see?
Well, some people would say, Latasha, especially during the whole George Floyd, that whole thing in 2020, people say, well, if anything, the Black community, we need to be armed. You need to be armed.
I've heard that, King.
Don't participate in the buy back the guns program. Don't do all of that, but instead, we need to be armed. So some people would say that, give that side of the argument.
But then we end up using it not for the purpose that we said. We end up using it.
So is the problem then the gun or the person?
Both.
Oh, Tasha said, you're not gonna back me into a corner. I said I don't like them. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
It's a gamble, because when you have something as powerful as a weapon like that in the wrong hands, and when you have
so it's the wrong hands.
It's the wrong hands, but then I don't know. I just don't like them guys. I'm sorry. I understand.
Let me ask you a question. When Jesus said to the apostles, and I put this out to you as well, Keenan, because I'm still not exactly sure. When Jesus said to the apostles, last time I sent you out without script or without purse, this time I'm telling you, when you go out, carry your purse, and he that does not have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. And the apostle said, we have 2 of them here. And Jesus said that ought to hold you. Yeah. What do you think that means, Tasha and Keenan, when Jesus recommended that they own a sword?
I see that as some form of survival. I actually see a sword a little different than a gun. Do you know what I mean? Like, I do.
The sword was the apex weapon of the day. But
with guns, when you're using a sword, you know what you're trying to do. Like, it's very, like, you got to have the skill. It's exact. Guns, people can just shoot around and miss the target, and to me, it allows for a lot more carelessness. And I think that's why it's the weapon of choice for so many, because people feel like anybody could pull a trigger. So using a sword, I mean, it takes a skill set to really be effective. So really? I feel that, like, I mean, because I've seen people try to use a sword.
The instructions on the sword says, grab sword by this end, swing other end that person. That's a lot of skill, huh, Tasha?
That person has to be in proximity to you, whereas people are shooting people from the top of buildings with, these snipers. Like, they don't even have to be close to you to take you out.
Being a sniper takes an extraordinary amount of skill.
Yeah,
it does, but you don't have to be in proximity. I feel like you can cause greater damage with something loaded with bullets than one sword. I mean, I know I've seen some of the
a gun is exponentially more dangerous because of the firepower
Right.
But at the time when Jesus made that statement, a sword was the weapon of the day. I mean, Keenan, what do I mean, as a theologian, what do you?
Well, one, when the disciples, when they asked, you brought up the point about the two swords, right? He said this would suffice, right?
Yeah, right.
All right, so now it was 12, or at that time 11 disciples. When was it 12 at that point? I don't know if Judas betrayed him at that point, but 12, let's say 12 disciples or 11. Two swords. Okay. So 2 swords amongst 11 disciples. I don't know how much protection that's going to be. That's just the first thing that comes to my mind. I don't know what's that going to do. And then not only that, but when he said the first time you didn't have the sword, but this time, because he knew that they were going to be rejected. So like, hey, gotta protect yourself. Gotta protect yourself. So that's the way I see it. Bring a money bag. You're gonna be rejected now. You'll be hunted and harmed. So yeah, go ahead, get you a sword. Yes.
I think even just the presence of it could have been, to ward off. We're not. I mean,
don't break bread, cut bread open, but self-preservation.
There's something about being prepared to live in the conditions
right
that you face rather than the conditions that you desire. I think all of us would like to live in Shangri-La where we didn't have to face these things. But we live in a world where evil men do evil things. I'm remembering that text. The kingdom of heaven has existed in a violent state, and violent people take it by force. And that text is very difficult to interpret. It's been wrestled with for years. But we live in a world where people will walk in a church and begin to shoot your old members. Shoot. They'll begin to shoot your young pastor who's in his latter 40s. With a military background and a terminal degree coming. I wonder if we have any like that. But I mean, so you got to be prepared. You have to be prepared, and a part of that preparation is you have to put certain cautions in place, I guess.
I agree, and you have to educate yourself. I know too, just preparing for this, just looking up what some of the laws are and some of the areas of policy that are being recommended just to educate. I mean, because some of us are just like, guns, yes, guns, no. And it's not a black and white thing.
Right.
There's certain ways that we can help it, to be safer or more requirements, or, the process should not be as easy, or, so there are a lot of things as it relates to the laws that I think we can educate ourselves more on. And I will share at the end, like some of the sites that people can go to kind of learn what those areas are, whether it's background checks or, the concealed versus open carry, what that is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, as we prepare to land the ship here, I don't have a carry permit, and I've been, at one point I was I ran an agency of government that was under intense fire. I was receiving death threats. I was the chairman. I was executive director of the Commission on Human Relations, and we had taken this. As a matter of fact, the place where Saquon Barkley went to get his steaks the other day, Geno's. He had that here in Philadelphia. I guess you might have missed that, but it's a very famous cheesesteak place in Philadelphia. Well, the city of Philadelphia had sued them about demanding that people speak English. And I became the head of the agency that had brought the lawsuit. I didn't do it, but I was the head of the agency, and people were calling, threatening my life. And the police commissioner said, I am suggesting that you begin to carry a firearm. And I wouldn't do it because I don't feel comfortable with that, having that power at hand in public, because I don't have a temper. I'll just shoot you because it's Thursday. And so I didn't want to carry the gun. And so I don't have a carry permit, but I do own a firearm. And it would be advisable that you not break into my home because you won't get a Bible study.
And that's your primary reason for protection alone?
Yeah, for protect. Well, actually, no. My primary reason for it was I found it to be very relaxing to go target shooting.
Oh,
that was because the
what was relaxing about that?
Let off some steam.
It let off some, not only that, but the ability, like any other sporting event where it takes a level of skill and focus and practice. It's not easy to. Have you ever gone to a firing range, Tasha?
No, I have not.
Okay, Keenan, we have to take her one time.
Yeah,
I mean, to train the weapon on the target, to control your breathing, to know how to focus, and how to steady the weapon so that you can hit that target. It's a skill, and I found it to be very, very relaxing.
I used to feel bad playing duck hunt. She had to shoot the little thing. I'm like, this seems. I just didn't want to get too comfortable with, you know what I mean? Because I feel like because it is for some people it's a sport, and it maybe can become too familiar where your instinct is, let me just draw this out, even when it's not necessary. But anyway, I'm okay.
Wow, Latasha, that's deep. You didn't even want to play duck hunt.
She didn't want to play even with toy ducks.
Yeah, like all the cool ducks.
And that's why the first firearm that I owned was the first firearm that I owned. I lived on a large lot in the woods, and one of my members was a state trooper. Said, "Pastor, if I were you, I would own a firearm here." He said, "I'm just telling you." He said, owning a firearm here is like having a piece of furniture. It's just necessary. But the first weapon that I actually owned was secured for me by a state police officer who just called me a few minutes ago, incidentally, because we would go out to the range, and he said, "Well, why don't you use your own gun?" He said, "It's cheaper." I said, "I don't have one." He bought it for me and said, "You can pay me later." And I would lock it up. And so if you broke in the house, I'd have to tell you, "Wait a minute, let me go get my lock and unlock my gun, and then I'm going to shoot you," which of course is no good. So it wasn't for home protection. It was for the sporting.
Was it a shotgun? Was it a shotgun?
No, it was a Russian-made 9mm handgun. It's called the Makarov. But very, very dependable. And so, but now that I live alone, I don't have kids because I have my 9-year-old daughter and all that. I didn't want a gun, but now that I live alone, of course, it's not simply for target practice. It's for persuasion, for those
strong persuasion, not to mess with.
Yeah, for those who might consider,
Yeah, if I'm not home, my wife, she's sleeping with the gun, with an arm reach.
My husband wants to teach me that, and I feel bad that I don't want to.
No, wait! I didn't teach her that. She did that just her own fear. Yeah, that's why she do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel it anyway. But
you said your husband. You were saying something about your husband, Tasha.
No, yeah, he was saying that I need to learn how to use one should the time come where I need it. And I just haven't, I haven't felt that need yet, and I know I don't want it to become something that I wish I had done, and now I don't have that skill. So who knows? Maybe I'll be at one of those ranges one day.
Wow, you made a full circle in one show. Great job.
I don't see it coming, but
because I'm gonna tell you, Keenan, them plastic ducks were starting to worry.
But anyway, no, honestly, I think with it being Gun Prevention Month, we always say anytime there's a month dedicated to something, it's usually because it's something that needs a little bit more attention and an invitation for us to educate ourselves a little bit more on that. And there are a few sites. Many of us are familiar with the site Giffords, GIFFORDS.org. This organization I think it's over 30 years. I didn't realize it had been that long. It has a lot of information on it, and we'll put the links in the show notes for you to be able to see about anything you need to know about background checks, child and consumer safety, guns in public, gun sales, the type of ammunition and hardware, just so you're familiar, so you can make healthy choices and know what's happening in your particular state. And then there's Everytown, literally everytown.org. It also talks a lot about gun safety and some of the things that you need to know. So yeah, let's use this as an opportunity this month to get a little bit more educated. And just because I don't like guns doesn't mean I don't want to know what I need to know in terms, especially for legislation purposes. Like knowing what certain local officials believe, so that I can share with my local representatives, or even make decisions based on how I feel about guns. So yeah. Thanks, guys, for having this discussion.
Good discussion.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how our viewers and listeners feel. I'm anxious to read the comments, so we look forward to you engaging with us in the chat. But thanks for joining us for another Upset podcast. And you know what I'm going to say. We'll see you back here next week, same time, same place. Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
God bless.